Today we're going to be taking a look at a brand that I really love, Tamiya. Give you some RC basics. See if you're interested in getting this far involved in radio control stuff, or if maybe a ready-made kit is more for you. Stick with me. One of the key things to remember about Tamiya is that they're a modeling company. So when you buy one of their kits, usually it's going to come in actual kit form. So you're going to end up with a box, and it's going to have parts trees and all kinds of other stuff in it. This one has obviously been emptied because I got everything laid out over here. So if you're not interested in doing things like cutting decals for hours, gluing tires onto rims, reading manuals, buying tools, and dealing with models and electronics, it's probably not the game you want to get into. And usually one of these kits does not come with everything you need to make a complete car. This one did not even come with rims and tires, so you got to find them. Definitely doesn't come with electronics. Got to find all those and decide which brand you like. After quite a lot of experience, I found that LRP is really solid stuff. You're going to have to get a radio and a servo for steering. You have to get paint for the body. This one doesn't come with a body. Some of them do. This body I had to get from Hong Kong because that's usually where a lot of this stuff is to be found with a greater degree of variety. And obviously, if you're not interested in getting into very, very minute stuff, including adjustments, building a model at this scale may not be for you. So you've decided to build a kit because you're a nerd like me. Usually, unless you buy one of the racing kits, most Tamiya kits will come with a set of tires and rims. This particular set of tires and rims did not. They do, however, pretty closely approximate the originals that come with it. Why did I switch? I run this car on dirt. Dirt tends to get right in here and start sending your tires and wheels off balance. This kit as well shows up with tarmac rally tires because that's what kind of rally the Monte Carlo is. Gluing tires onto rims and expecting them to hold up in dirt bashing isn't really the best idea as far as I found. So these G-made plastic bead locks work great. Depending on what kind of surface you're running, usually a bead lock can help out immensely. On a lot of my cars, you're going to find that I've swapped out the ball studs and adjusters for these Heim joints. Mostly it's because I like the way that they look. If you look, you can see there's movement. So as far as getting a super tight adjustment, you're not really gonna. Any of the racers are slapping their head and saying, duh. Well, I don't have any road racing tracks, so these are shelf queens with attitude. You can see down here, you've got these little ball studs here. When they're fresh, they live a good long time. Once they start wearing out, most of my rally vehicles get converted over to Heim joint ends. Making these angled ends is a little bit easier with the Heim joints because they've got some flex built into them. You can see how that one's angled a little bit, but as long as it's only moving one direction, you don't really have to worry about it. When you're looking for parts for your Tamiyas, especially in the aftermarket, don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit. This here being a TRF 417 car, it natively shows up with carbon reinforced plastic rear knuckles. This is my TA04R, and it shows up with plastic knuckles. Now originally, I bought these from Jazz Hobby on eBay. Really lovely gunmetal. I wanted to put them on that chassis. The arms ended up being way too thin, taking way too many shims on this pin, and the pins were just a little bit too small for the arms. So I had to go a different direction. It's not a waste of money though, because as you can see, we've got pretty much a perfect fit in width and overall configuration. So by the time I get those mounted up, the only thing that I'm really concerned about is the axle shaft diameter and that fitting the inside of those bearings. It's an easy upgrade to make, and it's a decent improvement over the original. It's not necessary to this car, but it's certainly not a waste to try and get some parts that you think might fit. A perfect example is this TB01 Evolution here. I found a body, made the wheelbase get approximately there. It's not perfect, but the knuckles and the front control arms come from a GF06, and they just happen to fit perfectly. And I think the rear knuckles for this will fit from a TT02B, which is the buggy designation. They look like the overall width is good. So I'm going to try those out. I'm going to get these put into there, and don't be afraid to do the same. You can even take stuff from some competitor brands and make it work all day long. Batteries. When we're talking about batteries, it's a huge performance factor. Going from a traditional nickel metal stick pack like this to a 2-cell LiPo like this is a huge move up, and most any Tamiya or RC is going to respond. These will give you a little bit longer run times and quite a lot more power. For my money, I do enjoy the Venom. This is a Fleurion pack, but their LiPos I'm not as successful with. I do like Gen's Ace LiPo battery packs. And then when it comes to chargers, what I've noticed is that these end up being about 30 bucks. And if you look at the way that it works and the electronics inside of it, the ones that they sell that are brand name are somewhere in the $70 to $90 range. But I've never had a problem charging them, and they actually have this function, PB, which is a lead acid battery. So if you're in a pinch, you can actually use it to charge your car battery. Kind of cool, great value for money. Whenever you buy a kit from Tamiya, usually they're not going to come with a radio. In my experience, the 2.4 gigahertz radios are better, and you can get the old school radios for fairly cheap, and they will still work. I really like the Futabas, the old school Tamiya radios, good value for money, as well as if you can find Airtronics gear. They're a little bit more expensive. As far as the modern stuff, you usually see these Tactic radios with a receiver for about 60 bucks. A Spectrum, 45 or 50. One of these Fly Skies, 30 to 40 bucks. It's not a bad deal. The Fly Skies do not have the same kind of precision as any other radio. For some reason, their turning seems to be a little bit less responsive. The Tactics are good, the HPIs are decent, and these old school radios do have usually enough adjustment to work with modern electronics. You will, however, have issues if this antenna on either type of setup is too close to the power wires on your battery, your capacitors, or your motor. So keep that in mind. The old school stuff, if it's a car that you're not running as much, can do you right. And parts and crystals can be found with them. That's a huge difference between the 2.4 gigahertz, which is one of these, and one of these old school AM or FM radios. I haven't had good luck with the FM radios because finding parts with them seems to be difficult. Mine are all AM, and right there with the little tag sticking out, you can see that it's got a little radio crystal in there. The receiver carries a matching receiver crystal. They are marked TX and RX so that you can put them in the right spot. So if you see here, you can see the T30 and R30, that's transmitter and receiver, 27.255 megahertz. That's just a spare set of chips that I've got. And I like to keep a bunch and some extra radios just for goofballing around. Anything that's going to be waterproof is usually going to be 2.4 gigahertz. If you think you're going to run this thing in mud or snow or water or even damp conditions, they pick up stuff and throw it more than you can imagine. So definitely go waterproof. And the Fly Skies, I'm not 100% sure are actually waterproof. Tactic seems to be 100%. So does HPI, because I've driven both of those underwater in lakes and streams. They do okay. This stuff, the AM stuff, definitely not waterproof. Don't try it. Dry tracks only. Brushed or brushless? I say both. Get your wiring on, get your schematics out, get a set of good wire strippers and crimpers, and you'll do just fine. One thing to pay attention to, numbers like this. That's an 8.5 turn motor, and for any Tamiya that I have ever purchased, way too much. They just don't have the strength. The fastest I think I've seen in a Tamiya that works effectively is somewhere in the 16 to 15 turn range, maybe a 17 turn motor. This one's a 17, that one's a 17.5, that one is a 17.5, that one right there is a 3000 kV brushless, sensorless, and those seem to work just fine, but they will put a hurting on your gear setups. Be careful when you're choosing motors. And if possible, always add a set of capacitors. Here's the scoop on your capacitors. They're cheap, they're easy, they're plentiful. If you can see right there, you get that little setup, the two little pop cans, 10 bucks, usually free shipping. As you see, they go down, they go into your main black and red power setup off of your motor controller. What they do is they store electricity at system voltage. You can see they're rated for 16 volts. But whatever the battery voltage is what they're going to have in them. So when the motor control releases its voltage and power down to the motor, when you pull the trigger, if there's any shudder to that voltage or a drop to it, these will allow their voltage into the system, and then when you release the trigger, they accept a charge back into them and hold it for the next run. Capacitive discharge ignition systems use the same kind of tricks to get a complete spark in an engine. These give your motor control the punch it needs to keep the tire spin where you need it to get on the drift in a rally car, or to get around that corner and out of the hole in any kind of a road car. Definitely a worthwhile investment, and it usually keeps your motor controls happy for quite a bit longer.